no possibility to see artwork because the people are just in a rush like in a shopping mall. They are rushing in, they are looking at the pieces, they are smiling at each other. No way. But the strange thing is when they have, for example, a specific show, like there was a show the last time when I was there, Pierre Huche, there you have to pay money to see it. And suddenly there are only a few people who would love to see the show. But then it's again the same situation where you really can approach art and where you really can feel close to art. And you are not disturbed by the others, by the other audiences. So in the Western society, it's maybe you're saying, I would love to have that in Thai culture, there would be audience to see art. In the culture I'm coming from, we have the problem that for some shows, the audience is running into it. And these are only exhibitions who are serving mostly the capitalism. Because the same audience doesn't care about an artist. He doesn't or she doesn't care about artistic fee. She doesn't care about making a better place with art. It's like being part of a lifestyle. And this has taken place in Europe, especially at Tate Modern in London, which is, when you read the media, mostly of them are writing that it is a huge success because so many are coming to see the exhibitions. But maybe it's the opposite, because it's not for all. And if, for example, an exhibition turns to be a shopping mall or turns to be only a meeting place, so maybe it's not longer an exhibition, even if it's the best collection you can imagine.
The thing is, I think also that the whole experience of viewing art, I think also the whole experience of viewing art has been democratized. For many years, museum curators have been trying to get the ordinary person to come. So I think it's a hard judgment call, because in a way they're now successful. The ordinary person comes if there's been enough publicity.
Exactly.
And who
but
knows?
Only if.
Yeah, it's true. And they aren't afraid. It used to be very elitist and people were afraid to walk into galleries and museums. Now they're not. Who's to say that someone might not be affected by something they see, even if they're walking through quickly? I mean, I think it's just a very hard call to make. Personally, I'm very disappointed when I go to a big show in New York. It's so hard to get a ticket now. You used to not even have to have a ticket. Now you have to get a ticket 4 months in advance. So here's a success, in a sense, and yet it means that you can't get as good a view if you're really interested. But on the other hand, people are supposed to go look at art, so I don't know how one judges that exactly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point, and because it's exactly the thing that we all have to deal with it. At the one point, we are all saying we would love to reach a bigger audience, and at the same time, it seems as if one would love to select the audience. Like at first, you have to pass an exam, and then you have the chance to see it. But if it turns out like in the Tate Modern or like at the MoMA show, I really would love to have it more elitaire maybe. And I even for me, I was glad if I can go to the other places. And if they were really interested in art, why are they not ready to pay a ticket for Pierre Huche?
For someone else.
Yeah, for someone else.
Yeah.
For even the Kandinsky show at the Tate Modern,
Didn't go to.
there were a few, but there were not so many. And these people have mostly money, not all of them, but at least a little. So they have the choice to say, okay, I go to the cinema to look a movie, or do I give the money for an exhibition? And that choice was very clear. So they have chosen the movie, or they have chosen the cafe latte and a very good brownie together. But they were not going for Kandinsky, and they were not going for Pierre Huche. But I mean, I have to admit I was lucky, because then I felt again very relaxed, and it was, for me, it was a kind of relief.
Yes, well,
Also, there was a time, I think maybe it was in the 80s, where a lot of museums were suffering financially, and it actually looked like they might not be able to survive. So there was a whole movement to bring restaurants and coffee shops and, products into the museum, and it was actually, it was a strategy. They had to do something because people weren't interested enough, because it was so elitist. So it's very hard to separate out all these things. On the one hand, isn't it great we still have museums? They might have gone bankrupt. And yet, I often feel when I go into the big museums, it's so commercial. There are so many stores. You come out of a beautiful exhibition and there's this enormous shop, and people get into buying things. But I don't know how to separate that out, because I'm very glad the museums still exist.
I'm very glad for your comments. And it's really hard to go, or to make it clear. For example, if you read the text, if you have the time to read the text by Nina Möntmann, you have it as a copy in your reader, then it might help you, especially in the things you have just pointed out. Because in the beginning it was really a huge success. And that's why, for example, in the 80s, when there were a lot of money in the Western society, then that was a time when the museums got built. And now the museums have not enough money to buy their collection. They don't have enough money to do the research work, which has to be done. And that's one of the reasons why they put so much attention to the coffee shop, to the bookshop, to the restaurant, and to have these big names in their shows, because it's only like a label. Like, for example, some of us are running for, let's say, Calvin Klein, and some of the audiences are running for Matisse. But one name is not sufficient. That was for me so surprising with the Kandinsky show. So it has to be a huger brand even than one name. But I'm very happy that you brought it up, because it's not easy to answer. And that's why Elke Austenmore has said, if you are working for an institution like a museum, then make clear that you have still a critical approach. Just that you be aware that it's not only about that the museum has enough money. Please make as well sure that the research is done. Please make sure that, that for example, how the art is stored is still in a very good professional way done, because this costs a lot of money, and there is no audience who will see this. It's the next generation we have to take care, and it's the artwork themselves we have to take care. You are taking care of my papers.
I'm sorry.
Just 1 second.
This one is mine.
This one is yours? Because we were... Where's mine? Let's see. So we even haven't finished Elke Austenmore, haven't we? Where have I stopped? Okay. Be aware Yeah, that was the point. Be aware that your project should not serve the capitalistic system. And the next point she's doing is support different forms of artistic articulation. Support creative, collaborative practices when you are inviting, for example, artistic groups. And then she's running for the thing, allow experiments and presentation in the architectural field and also in the way of presentation. Make the process of a project transparent. For example, if I read a statement like this, it really remembers me a lot of the 90s. For example, there is a gallery which is quite important in Berlin. The name is Neugeringschneider, and it's one of the most important galleries we have, and we have really a lot. I think we have more than 100. And what these galleries have done to the audience, but as well to the artists, is they have opened a space. For example, they have done a show where in the beginning there was only, you have to imagine, a bigger room like that, the gallery space, and they have in the beginning only have showed one piece of art. So the visitor have only had the chance to see one piece, and then they have invited one of their artists who are taken care of to comment this piece. So it was an exhibition in process, because after maybe 2 months, then you had 7 pieces who have comment each other. And it was one of the things which is very unusual, that a gallery who has to be commercial is doing such a nice and radical approach. But for example, that would be, in my point of view, an exhibition as a gesture, because it is quite radical. And it's dealing with a lot of things which Elke Ostermore, for example, has talked. And the next point she's doing is support different forms of knowledge production, learning from, working with, dancing together. Give space to new forms. Invite the informal way of spreading knowledge. Translate theory into physical experiences and practice and vice versa. And the last point she's making is don't forget to have fun. So who's the next person who will give us a curator statement?
Understandable why. And this is, I just try to persuade you to think on those situations and your situation here and reflect on this. And whether we should have a representative, because what you say, my interpretation is interesting, but it is it's come to the same thing as a show, whether it's the artist or the curator. But the significance to have a curator is he or she represent the artist. They not represent themselves, not present themselves. And once we don't have the term institution, the museum institution, or the very, so let's say we have a few independent galleries, which is not much interfere from the commercial. So let's think about it.
And I mean, one thing is clear, so everyone, the Thai side or even the Western side, all of us are saying, let's go for engagement, let's go for production. And I think this is the one which is really the most important. And then afterwards you can create the spaces where you would love to show the artwork. Here maybe it's a time to found a museum for contemporary art. I would agree with you completely. And I also would agree with your point of view saying I would love that the Thai people are going and care more about visual art. But for example, where I'm coming from, I have a little bit a different perspective, and the reason why I have showed these two different perspectives is because both are right and both have their senses in their cultural society. So maybe before the break, is there someone who would love to present their own curatorial statement, and then we go for the break? You have done one, right? No? But there were a few.
Top thought.
Interesting point.
Like you like to see Van Gogh or whatever, very famous. You have to go to the fourth floor. Already tired. Okay, what is my utopia? My utopia is one big box building that represents all of my favorite museum in one. That is like the art piece is everything I like. I like painting of my favorite artists and installation art and also the new media in one building. And the audiences are anyone. And the space is very easy to access for everyone, even handicapped. Why I said this? Because one of my experience like to share. I've been to France, and usually once in a week in France. Last year, I've been there last year, and I found that on Sunday in France they open the gallery and the museum for free. And the thing is, very in the early morning, I found that parents took their kids to queue on the line to wait to get into the gallery. That is very impressive for me, that the parents try to educate their kids since they were young. And I'd like to have this experience and this atmosphere in Thai as well, because as I had a chance to join this workshop, I found that the Society of Art People, curator, or anyone who is interested in art is so very limited, and they like to expand it more and more in Thailand. So if we, I don't know which organization we will be involved or in charge of, but if we can create things or educate like French people like that, it would be great to educate kids since they were young.